So Valve hasn't released a mainline game relating to one of its legacy franchises since about 2012. No, I'm not counting Alex, because how many of you even have a VR headset to play that game? Or Artifact, because that's a piece of last game related to anything from then was Portal 2. Not only is it one of the best games to ever be created, but it's probably required to have been played before you watch this video, otherwise this will make no sense. If you haven't played it, dude, it is literally 13 years old, alright? So just go play it. Anyways, Portal 2 has always had fan-made content for it, as custom levels came with it since the launch of the game. But the restriction there is that they have always had to use pre-existing objects and mechanics that were already in the game. Not to say none of this wasn't interesting, because some of this stuff, for example lasers creating a bootstrap paradox that violates the conservation of energy, and the specific reason why I bring up bootstrap paradoxes is because of what we're talking about today. Time travel, with the mod Portal Reloaded. So it opens with you, the test subject, inside a tube. Unlike Chell, who has a full condo with a radio, toilet and bed, you have Asbestos! This opening section is definitely a reference to the Citadel in Half-Life 2. Completely helpless watching people pass you by. But in this game, they aren't horrific meat puppets. You get the obvious warnings of
slight cases of sore throat, or blurry vision, or death.
Just to really remind you, yes, this is Aperture Science. It ends with you being sucked into another tube, and it nails subtly how little Aperture cares about you, since you literally share these tubes with testing cubes. Once you finally arrive at the chamber, you have to wait 20 whole years to leave, or you could just time travel. Funnily enough, Aperture leaves these tests, supposedly, untouched for 20 years, meaning the whole building falls apart around you. You then travel back to the past to leave. And no, unlike all the Portal games that came before, you must be atomized and reconstructed to get to the next chamber, because an existential crisis costs less than an elevator. This next chamber is the introduction to cubes. You have a cube in both present and future. If you take the cube from the present to the future, this violates causality. It has to be vaporized to prevent time from collapsing. However, this is not true if it's done the other way around. Bringing the future cube to the past will not violate causality, as the future doesn't affect the past, but the past affects the future. You place the present cube in front of where the barrier will exist in the future to, of course, leave the level. Chamber 3 is more of the same, but in this case you have to realize that you can have two of the same cube at once if you bring the future cube back to the past to hold down the other button. Chamber 4 is actually quite interesting, since the way to solve it isn't the most obvious thing in the world. You have to place the present cube near the lift, and using the future cube to hold down the button, it will lower the lift, and then when you get on the lift, you pick up the past cube, which then means the future cube ceases to be, and then you can leave the level. Beyond this point, it will get harder and harder, and at some points, I will be a little pissed off. Just wait for Chamber 17. This is reflected by Steam reviews for this mod. Chamber 5 is when it actually starts getting good. You have the future and past areas be distinct from each other due to the fact the button for the cube is inaccessible in the past. However, you can access it in the future, and using this future cube, you can now access the cube in the past by jumping on it. Now what you have to do is leave the past cube in this spot, so it's accessible from both layers. Go to the future, pick that one up, use it, and now you can access the upper layer, which means you can pick up the past cube, which erases the future cube, and then place it on the button to complete the puzzle. Very good stuff. Back to the Identity of Crisis machine. This next chamber is finally the chamber where you get the portal gun, in the game about shooting portals. It only took 20% of this mod. Sadly though, you can only use the blue and orange portals, and not the green time portal. However, that doesn't mean this still isn't sort of interesting. You have to realize that past portals can affect future portals, but not the other way around, like cubes before. Using this fact, you can have essentially two pairs of two portals in two different points in time. If I sound like an insane person, that's because this is an insane mechanic. I also forgot to mention how I love the blending of two aesthetics in Portal, as this combines both looks from the start of Portal 2 and the end of Portal 2, and making it really feel like you're time traveling. Anyways, getting to the next chamber, 7, is actually fun, as again it reminds you that you really just adventure through the facility and somehow make it through, despite having zero infrastructure between the chambers, like the middle section of Portal 2. Again, did I tell you how good this mod is? Don't worry, this childlike sense of whimsy will be immediately crushed by the next few chambers. Chamber 7 is actually where this ramps up a little, and I literally stumbled on this solution by complete accident, which is both impressive and extremely funny, which in hindsight is a massive skill issue because this chamber is not even that hard. So due to the fact that the future differs from the past, some surfaces don't exist in the future. The main one of note is the one next to the exit in the future, but the future door is accessible unlike the present one. Instead of neatly explaining this to you with a beautifully written script, I'm just going to show it on screen because I don't know what to say. This shouldn't have taken me this long. Chamber 8 is the pretty easy introduction to momentums and dropping into portals to get around the chamber. The most important thing about this is knowing that the notification grids are space portals in both past and future, if you're in the past, but not time portals, so it's important to figure out the correct sequence of events for the puzzle to actually play out properly. Not what to say here, apart from that I enjoyed it because flying around in portal games is where most of the fun is. Chamber 9 now finally allows you to place your own time portals, which I promptly forgot to bind to a key. Firstly, you need to put a cube on the button, and using the now raised surface you can place a time portal on it, and the 2 space portals on top and in the pit, which now allows you to carry momentum into the future, crossing the gap. Then you can simply travel to the past, carry the cube up to the upper level, steal the one from the future, and you're done. These puzzles are the most rewarding puzzles I've ever seen or encountered in a game. This is great. I sure do hope I don't struggle for an hour on the next puzzle. Okay, you're not gonna believe this. I struggled for an hour on the next puzzle. Mainly because I took so long on it, the game itself decided to break the rules of time and space. I have no idea how I got 4 portals in one time point that each go to different points in time. This is so impressively stupid, and I have no idea how I did it. Anyways, this puzzle was very hard at first until I went to bed, came back, rewatched the footage, and realized the way you do it requires you to violate causality on purpose to destroy the future cube. I'll put the footage on screen, but the long and short is to position the cube on the ground in the past in a way that allows you to place a time portal below it to destroy it, which destroys the future one remotely. Very clever if I'll be honest, though the fact that I broke reality halfway through probably added to the difficulty. Number 11, I really didn't like, because it is a dreaded time puzzle, which, this being annoying, is the most ironic thing in a mod about time travel. It just requires you to string portals together to have all 3 buttons activated at once. It's just a bit finicky and annoying. I didn't like it. 12 is actually pretty fun, even though it's slightly timed. I didn't hate it as much. You need the past cube to hold down a button for the future cube, since it wouldn't work the other way around, and string the future cube along and place a space portal in place of the time portal when needed to get it to the button that opens the door. And your reward is being deatomized again. 13 is where the fun begins. Lasers, or more commonly known as thermal discouragement beams. These are interesting because past lasers can exist in the future, since the source of the laser isn't brought to a different time, but the laser resulting from it is. Anyway, this puzzle is really easy and it's just your introduction to this mechanic. You also learn the fun tidbit that you've been lobotomized and had a chip fitted into your brain to relay the in-game messages. Thanks, Aperture. Chamber 14 was sort of annoying, just because the lasers require you to have the portals perfectly aligned for the puzzle to work. And this becomes more annoying when you adjust a past portal, which adjusts the corresponding future portal, which means you have to go back to the future to replace the portal, which means you mess up the alignment again, and you see the point. You also get introduced to prism cubes, or discouragement redirection cubes, which amplify the alignment problem again as well, since the past cube cannot be moved without messing up the future cube. Fun puzzle, just really finicky. 15 requires serious logical thinking, and the puzzle basically exists in 2 parts. The first part requires you to raise a lift to access the button that gives you a cube. You need to light up 2 spots, which are both vertically aligned. The trick to this is realizing you need to use both lasers in both timelines, as that firstly allows you to trigger the lift while you're on it, and makes it actually possible to light them both up. You get the past cube and place it up top, as you need it for the button up there, and get the future version of it to exist behind the barrier to light up both of the 2 nodes. Cross into the main room again, and then before you pick up the past cube and ruin everything, use a total of 5 portals to finally get the laser up there. Pick up the pass cube, and finally, you're done. And you actually get congratulated. For once.
Well, you solved it. Congratulations.
Chamber 16 was not how I was supposed to complete it at all. Also, before I forget, this is the introduction to aerial faith plates. Like Chamber 10 earlier, the space portal's corrupted. However, I actually now used it to my advantage this time and cleared it extremely easily. Look, I know this is technically cheating, but yeah, I don't really have an excuse for this one. I'm sorry about cheating in a way that is somehow super impressive. If you want the legitimate solution, it's on screen right now. Anyways, the voice in my head was also feeling the bugginess of this whole ordeal by sounding like a YouTube poop from the 2010s.
The half test discourse or located unfortunate no avail of taking there. So you will have to take the stair.
What he was trying to say is take the step. Oh, yeah, so both diegetically and mod-wise, this facility and the game is starting to fall apart. Just like how I decided to throw myself off the balcony for no reason. You do some exposition where the voice guy says,
"You might have noticed that something is not quite right here. Remember when we told you that the decay of the facility was completely intentional? Turns out, that was a lie. There is a bigger picture here. Your test might be the most important one ever conducted."
This absolute decay in design and structure is going to be perfectly accentuated by this next chamber. Chamber 17. So I've struggled with how to review this chamber properly, as it's kind of bad, but not really bad. The main issue I have, you have to figure out one thing and the rest of the puzzle just falls out of that. But finding what that is actually pretty hard. Yeah, so I searched up the answer to this, and I'm ashamed to say that, but to be fair, I would have not got this. The thing I struggled with is this. Now, I know it doesn't look like much, and that's because it really isn't much, because I definitely overfunked this. This is probably karmic punishment for the last chamber where I accidentally cheated. Thank God this chamber doesn't take that long though. Getting to the next chamber is probably the most interesting level transition so far. Just moving through a bunch of aerial faith plates. But what is chamber 18 like? Absolute cinema. Look, this chamber is hard, yeah, but I had fun because I actually knew what I was doing, unlike the last one. Essentially, there's a jump pad, a prism cube, and 2 perfectly aligned laser receivers next to the door. The pad on the left is raised in the present, so is accessible in the present, which you do first as you need to put the present cube over there, angled to the white spot in the center. You then do the same for its future counterpart, but instead have it oscillate through time itself. Then using this stored momentum, transport it over to the future time, then oscillate yourself through time itself. Then line up the 2 lasers, get up to the top, connect the 2 sides, and it's done. It's beautiful, it's symmetrical, I love this chamber. Chamber 19 is the intro to light bridges, and as an introduction to the mechanic, it's pretty alright. You firstly need to get over to a cube by chaining light bridges over to each other, then place the cube on a button all the way at the other side of the room to remove a barrier. Take the featured version of the cube and try and put that cube in the hole, and just fail miserably. Then you have to do some time travel shenanigans to put the cube you've just dunked onto the button.
The next thing you will do is jump in 3, 2, 1.
Also, the voice in my head is telling me to jump, but generally if the voices in your head are telling you to jump, I'd advise against it. Unless it's Wheatley, which then I understand.
And I just wanted to give you the chance to kill yourself now.
20 is easier than expected, but walking into it I must have had a full frontal lobotomy, because I kept messing it up at the final part. The first part of the puzzle is pretty easy, getting the cube, which can just be done through trial and error to stop it from flying into the force field and getting vaporized by stringing a light bridge up there. Now you have this cube, you have to use the future version of it, this is important, to stop the laser and allow yourself to get onto the first platform. Then drop it fully onto the button on the ground to lower the second platform, and then, this is why the future one is important, destroy the present one like you do in Chamber 10 and thereby destroy the future one to finally raise the button. Chamber 21 is a massive underutilization of mechanic and is actually probably the worst chamber in the whole mod. It introduces turrets and you'd think, Oh wow, that's so cool. I love these little guys. But this is the only chamber in the entire mod that they appear in. And they are not utilized properly. Since when they appear, you cannot interact with them. No racing them with time portals or anything mechanically interesting or fun. Just bullets and loading screens. I'm going to come clean about this, as I searched up the solution, and I still didn't understand what I was doing. You need to get to the exit using a cube and a light bridge, but I was just absolutely clueless on how to do so. This puzzle feels like rage bait, and I'm being baited pretty well. I'll just show me solving it on screen here, because I don't want to talk about this one anymore. It's not inventive or clever, just painful. Like 100 bullets in your sternum, painful. And to add insult to injury, literally, the facility decides to shoot you on your way out the chamber for laughs, and then says,
At this point, you might rightfully be asking yourself why we put you through all this. This testing track was built as a failsafe. My job is to ensure that testing can continue, no matter the circumstance. You see, this facility is largely controlled by one entity. For some reason, this entity seems completely unresponsive.
20?
Years from now. That's why the future looks the way it does. We have lost all control, and we need to find a way to restore it.
so you get tortured and then ask for favors. Alright, so a switch up in how I talk about these chambers. I'm not going to cover literally every single detail now, because I am free to do what I want. So interesting things only. You got a cube going back and forth, and you need to stop it. How? Time travel. Duh. You go back to the future to get a new future cube. Smart viewers may realize, how does this cube not get vaporized immediately? Smarter viewers may also realize that the smart viewers are dumb, because it's about if its fate has been changed, not if it's been moved. This point is actually what makes this chamber so good, because it's not what you expect. You collide the future one and the past ones above the funnel, which destroys the future one, and the remaining cube goes so neatly into the hole that I immediately made it my favourite chamber. The rest really isn't that interesting though. Light bridge here, light bridge there, light bridge everywhere! Look, I'm going to move on to the next chamber because it's got a lot of good stuff. So we're nearly at the end here, finally meeting the last mechanic that gets introduced, this being the excursion funnels. I really like the excursion funnels. I also learned they use liquid asbestos, so we've actually come full circle, starting and ending with asbestos. Enough about that. In the chamber, you sort of just use them to move around. It's not that complicated. Just get a cube to switch the polarity from repelling to pulling in the past, take it off in the future, and also take it off to the past. Go around the barrier to get the portal up top, and then use future funnel to get up there. And then mess around for nearly 30 seconds trying to get the cube into the middle, to finally get the cube up here and leave. Good stuff. Also the voices in your head speak to you again.
The time-bending technology used to create these time portals is only stable in one specific configuration. We cannot choose the exact point in time to which the time portals will lead. We can only take a small glimpse of what the facility looks like
20?
years from now. What exactly transpired is still unknown, but the data we collected points to a single rogue test subject.
The next chamber is the penultimate chamber in this mod, and it's essentially liquid asbestos overload. You have a cube and you just move it around, and it's really fun. You just do that for a while. That's it. The only issue is that it doesn't really utilize time travel very well, since, well, you don't need to shoot a time portal for most of this, until the end when you get the cube to the button to enable a portal surface on the wall. And then you go to the future and Control Z the cube into your hands. Go back to the past and put the cube on this little ledge in the wall. This feels unintentional, but is actually by design. And then use the excursion funnel to push it onto the button on the wall. And that's it. Not a lot of time travel here, but it's still pretty fun. Now onto the final chamber, 25, with a side of extremely non-subtle exposition about murdering Chell.
In the event that something horrific were to happen to this facility in the future, my protocol is to find a viable candidate that can withstand the effects of time travel on the human body and help to rectify whatever led to the tragic events of the future. That's where you come in. We need you to stop this test subject dead in its tracks and save the facility.
Chamber 25 is essentially a 4-part puzzle. We have to line up all the pieces to go through the 4 sets of laser doors and finally the exit door. Door 1 requires you to just put a portal with a present prism cube next to it to divert the laser into the receiver. Door 2 requires another cube, this time from the future, to go to another laser receiver, which you do by swapping out the laser used for door 1. Then you reach the halfway point, which has a time portal door, which you use to configure a light bridge in the future to then bring it to the past. This will allow you to open door 3 by touching the other laser contact, and then finally pushing the cube all the way up to the button to get past door 4. Finally, you must get a cube up to the ledge, and before you freak out like I did when I realized you still need to hold a button by the door, use the present cube by guiding it to the central point using the excursion funnel, then finally bring the cube from the future, then using the momentum from the cube appearing randomly in the future, finally get it to the ledge. And that's pretty much it. Wow! Finally a Portal game where I don't get betrayed the last minute. Foreshadowing is a narrative device.
We will put you back in stasis until the day of the incident, and you will be the one to prevent it.
But they don't really try that hard. I mean, clearly they wanted me to leave as they put a giant yellow exit sign right next to the stasis chamber.
Warning, you are going the wrong way. Please be aware that escaping is not an option here. You are far too important. If you won't go voluntarily, we will be forced to destroy your current body in order to put you back together in the stasis chamber. But this will be a small price to pay in order to help save the facility. Think of it as a sacrifice to science. Thank you, and goodbye.
Enter stage left and right. Crushers. Enter stage down. Time portal.
Warning, you are deviating from your path. Facility power has reached critical levels. Connection unstable. Don't.
And you can finally escape because you condemn the facility to its fate. You go up the only elevator in the entire mod, apart from the starting elevator, to replicate Portal 2's ending. You get to escape, no bells and whistles, but now you're face to face with head crab zombies, ready to maul you to death. And worst of all, you're in Upper Michigan, in Combine occupied Earth. You should have just stayed down there if you valued your life and ability to live. In terms of story, it's obviously not as in-depth as the original series since it's not made by a bunch of screenwriters, but I think the humour here is pretty good in the sense that it does the black comedy very well, and the ending is very reminiscent of the part where he kills you in the first game, that it even has the same crushers. And if you're curious, there is an ending where you stay, but that's not exactly very interesting, and also definitely isn't canon, as Chell does kill GLaDOS. So obviously you were predetermined to escape, or time corrects itself to have this always happen, so you must have died in stasis. This ending dichotomy is so similar to Half-Life 1's ending, where you either stay to be used as a pawn for something greater than yourself, or you're just left out there to fend for yourself. Which in that game, going outside and fending for yourself is usually considered the bad ending, but in this mod it's left a lot more vague. In summary, the plot was pretty good, the art direction was great, though I mentioned that earlier on in the video, and I actually really liked the design of the green portal, and was surprisingly not that buggy for a mod of this caliber. Only parts that need improving are probably chambers 17 and 21, but you've already heard my gripes about them when I talked about them. And to be honest, they're probably not that bad, I'm just really stupid. And as a final remark, play the mod. I know I spoiled most of it, but you should at least experience this, as I hate it when people use video essays as a substitute for consuming the actual media in question that they are talking about. So, support the developers, play the game. So yeah, that's about it. So this is the end of the video. Well done for making it all the way here. Press all the buttons below, and if you have any suggestions of things or stuff I should talk about, leave them in the comments, and I might read them. I might ignore them, but I might read them. and maybe I might talk about them. Or you could go to my completely barren Discord server that hasn't been used in 2 years. It's your choice. Anyways, I'll see you later, or earlier, or at a point in time. Not sure when or where. See you sometime.